11 days ago, CNBC launched this video titled "What Happened to Etsy?" Since then, they have almost 1 million views on it, and honestly, I've seen a lot of people talking on social media about what this video actually means. For me personally, I don't sell on Etsy, so I'm going to be slightly biased in this video today. I have been selling print-on-demand items on Shopify since 2016. I make lots of videos here on my channel about how you can succeed with that. I show a lot of the products that I've sold. I share strategies that I'm currently using to make sales. I was also invited to the Printify event last year where I did a debate about Shopify versus Etsy. And in this video today, what I sort of want to do is break down this video from CNBC and help you to understand what I think this means for print-on-demand sellers going forward. If you have not seen CNBC's video, I will put a link down in the pinned comment of this video so you can check it out. So let's let it play. I'm going to let a few seconds go by and we'll watch it together and then I'll give you some thoughts.
Global e-commerce platform known for unique and handmade goods reported its highest ever annual revenue of $2.7 billion in 2023. But that's not the full picture. Its gross merchandise sales, or the total value of goods sold on Etsy, declined in the same period, falling flat for the second year in a row.
If you don't understand what that means, basically Etsy broke revenue records, but the overall gross merchandise sales actually went down, meaning the total value of products that were purchased on Etsy went down in the same period that they were breaking records, which means they broke revenue records because they've increased fees. That is ultimately how they made more money than ever.
And first quarter 2024 earnings results didn't look much better.
Etsy's consolidated results, while within our guidance range, were not where we wanted them to be.
After the big increase in both buyers and spending per buyer during COVID, it looks like they've hit a wall. And you basically have a company that has not grown in 2 years.
This is something I've actually talked a lot about here on my channel, that the Etsy revenue growth, while they are breaking a little bit of records, they're still only at $2.7 billion in revenue and they are not growing. This is an article here from Printful that's basically predicting that by the year 2031, we are going to see $39 billion a year in print-on-demand sales. My basic argument that I've always made is that if we are going to hit these numbers, it's likely not going to come from Etsy because they are only generating $2.7 billion as a company per year. All of that is obviously not print on demand. I would say a very small portion of Etsy sales are print on demand. And ultimately, for us to achieve this number, those sales are going to come from somewhere else. I've always said those sales are going to come from people building their own brands on Shopify and using the power of social media to make their sales.
If uploading 200 designs to Etsy, for example, as a marketplace was a great strategy, then we would all still spend our time doing the same thing with places like Redbubble or Teespring and Cafe Press and, all these other platforms that have existed over the years, and, no shade to them or anything, but they're not here anymore. If we were, doing Amplified 4 years ago, whoever was sitting there would be from a different platform. Right. And someone over here would be arguing about brands. This is a timeless strategy. In the year 2019, there was less than 2 million Etsy shops. That number's over 6 million now. I mean, you guys have all but confirmed that Amplified is going to be back next year. I would be curious to know next year what that number will be, and we'll compare. We'll see the growth, and I would be curious, long-term, what's going to be the next platform. So I think ultimately, yes, it is easier, but at the same time, I don't think it's a timeless strategy.
That clip was from the Printify debate that I did, and basically what I was trying to say is that we have always had print-on-demand platforms that existed. However, every couple of years, there's a new platform. I've always said as well that building your own brand on your own website using Shopify is a timeless strategy, and I think we are beginning to see some of that play out.
For the month of April, Etsy sold $133 million worth of face masks. That's 12 million face masks.
The pandemic was a boon for Etsy. The number of active buyers increased by about 77%. Gross merchandise sales grew by more than 100% year over year in 2020 and more than 30% in 2021. Etsy's stock price reached its all-time high that same year. It also started charging some of its sellers for advertising, bringing in additional streams of revenue.
Pandemic-related success is just that. It's a fluke. It's a flash in the pan.
For me, there's really two takeaways from that statement. The first is questioning if Etsy's overall potential for POD sellers is just that, a fluke. Now that the pandemic isn't driving sales, what does that mean for the future? Right now, they are declining year over year in terms of gross merchandise sales, especially as more and more sellers are joining Etsy to try and sell products. This is a graph here that shows that every single year, the amount of sellers on Etsy is just going up and up and up. We are now over 7 million sellers. If Etsy isn't growing and we're just having more and more sellers, that means less sales for everybody.
So far, missed earnings in 2023 and the first quarter of 2024 are leaving investors with little doubt that the pandemic may have been just that, a fluke. In December 2023, the company laid off 11% of its staff. But as Etsy focuses on a comeback, it's also angering some of its biggest stakeholders, its sellers. Some longtime sellers are partly blaming CEO Josh Silverman, saying his focus on profits has pushed the company away from its vision. allowing counterfeits and mass-produced items to thrive, demoralizing artists and buyers.
Competing with people who are generating art via artificial intelligence now, I can't compete. It's just junk, a lot of it.
You're just going to be a slightly more expensive Amazon? That seems like a terrible business plan.
With discretionary spending down.
This problem is something I actually made a video about last year, how Etsy is becoming a place where a lot of sellers who actually are selling handcrafted goods are getting quite upset that the entire platform is just being filled with AI created designs on lots of different products. I detailed in that video about 6-7 months ago how Etsy is at a crossroads. It was started as a handmade goods place, and it has now transitioned into, like they said in the video, a more expensive Amazon.
When Etsy first came on the market in 2005, it was a revolutionary idea. People who loved arts and crafts finally had a place to buy those things all the time and get connected with sellers and artisans and artists who maybe they would have never encountered before.
Etsy's founder and then CEO, Rob Kalin, built a platform to empower artisans. His vision was that Etsy could influence society in a way that people would think more consciously about the products they chose.
How do you get from just doing it as more of a hobby to organizing this to the point where you can actually make a living?
The virtual storefront also enabled a new kind of revolution.
These small businesses, these local artists suddenly had the ability to connect with buyers all over the world. And this was huge. I mean, it was an opportunity for them to grow their brand, grow their sales.
Nicola Lean Legault and Chiara Lore are just two of the many artists who joined Etsy to sell more of their work. Legault has been there since 2009.
Everyone that I knew was opening up a little shop because it was one of the only places that was offering this platform and template.
It was very about the sellers. They were really driving the traffic and making the site what it was and creating a community.
As competition was stiffening, the next CEO made a big change in 2013, allowing artists to use outside manufacturers to produce their designs. The term handmade was getting looser.
The term handmade was getting looser. That's exactly what I talked about in the video that I uploaded about 7 months ago. This has been a recurring theme with Etsy, where, like I said, the term handmade is getting a little bit looser. They are starting to allow lots of other different types of things on the platform. A lot of the goods that are being sold there are potentially just pre-made drop-shipped items. And ultimately, there is an entire group of sellers on Etsy that has been extremely vocal about this.
Its deteriorating reputation is another issue the company is fighting. Sellers have blamed the 2013 rule change allowing creators to outsource their production for what they call the junkification of Etsy. This isn't a new problem, but one that some say has gotten worse as the number of sellers grows.
I want to show you the sadness on Etsy and what it's become.
Legault went viral for her TikTok exposing many of the top Etsy shops as dropshippers, or sellers who make the designs but outsource the labor to another company. Some designs are made with AI-generated images. Dropshippers are able to mass-produce items like t-shirts, stickers, and stationery.
Every click, I was like, what is it? Cups, again, cups. And then another, I click again, it's cups again. And I'm just like, how is this possible?
The term crossroads was used here. Etsy is at a crossroads. It is basically becoming a platform that is much different than what it originally started at. The video now goes on to talk about some of the actions that Etsy is trying to take to sort of go back to those original handmade roots.
In a comment to CNBC, Etsy said that it recognizes its current definition of handmade includes a broad spectrum of items and will clarify its policies to be more transparent about what belongs on Etsy in the coming months. Etsy said it removed 115% more listings for violating company policy in the first quarter 2024 than the year prior.
We've always taken down items for not complying with not handmade. That's always been a focus, but we've been getting better technology and investing a lot in that.
And like I said earlier, I made a video in October 2023 where I was talking about the fact that Etsy is sort of distancing themselves from their original goal of being a handmade place. And when I say handmade place, I mean a place that offers handmade goods from artists and crafters. I said in the video in October that this was likely going to ramp up and Etsy will continue to remove a lot of listings and ultimately deactivate shops. And that's exactly what they just said they did in Q1 of 2024, which was just a few months after I said they would do that in my video. Now, I'm not trying to act like I predicted the future or anything like that. I'm just trying to show you that if you're paying attention, the dots are lining up in the direction that we are heading in with Etsy. One of the jobs that I had in my life was actually a little bit corporate. I used to be a district manager for a certain company, and I have a little bit of experience with stuff like this. And what I'll tell you is that a video like this coming from CNBC talking about all of these issues is likely going to make Etsy increase everything they've already been doing in regards to their handmade policy. I would be curious over the next 6 months, the next 12 months, what we see happen with Etsy, as they said they are going to clarify their position on handmade goods in the coming months.
Etsy CEO says the company is still trying to engage and retain current buyers, half of whom only shop on Etsy once per year.
That's another comment that I thought was interesting. If everybody's always celebrating Etsy as this place that has built-in buyers. The CEO is telling us that half of Etsy's customers only shop once per year. To me, again, I think that's further reinforcing the fact that Etsy as a platform has not actually grown. Yes, I said earlier they had revenue records that they set. However, at the same time, they actually had declining gross merchandise sales, which means the value of everything on the platform that has been purchased has actually gone down. The way that they've broken revenue records is by increasing fees.
The 7 million artists are what the company was founded on, and without them, Etsy is perhaps no longer Etsy, or offers what buyers are looking for anymore.
Many sellers feel trapped. They're not really making enough profit margin on Etsy anymore.
And that's something that I have heard from more than just this video here. I run the POD Ninjas Facebook group. We have about 90,000 people inside of that group, and a lot of them do sell products on Etsy. I have heard time and time again about people that are investing a ton of time into an Etsy store. They are creating hundreds of different designs and ultimately burning themselves out before any real money is made. And I think ultimately that clip that she just talked about kind of reinforces that issue. If you haven't seen the CNBC video, the rest of it sort of goes on to question what the future holds for Etsy, and that's kind of what I'm asking you here at the end of my video. As I've sort of reacted to this and broke down a few of the things that they talked about in the video, I'm curious from you, what do you think about the future of Etsy? I am someone, like I said earlier, who is incredibly biased here. I don't sell products on Etsy. I use Shopify. I like to grow brands on social media, and ultimately I don't like the Etsy strategy. I'm trying to be perfectly upfront about that. I'm curious from those of you out there that are selling on Etsy what you are thinking after watching this CNBC video. Do you think that I am accurate in my assessment, or do you think I am way off? I think it's totally possible that I could be misreading this entire thing. My comments that I've made today could be way off. My comments today could be inaccurate. My predictions about what's going to happen in the future with Etsy could also be way off as well. Ultimately, I'm just trying to react to this because it happened 11 days ago. It has almost 1 million views on YouTube, and there's been a lot of people on social media talking about this. I think the 3 main takeaways from the video is that first and foremost, Etsy is not growing. Yes, they did break a revenue record. They've achieved $2.7 billion in revenue. Obviously, that is not all from print on demand. If we look at the growth projections for print on demand, we see that we are going to reach almost $39 billion by the year 2031. My basic argument with that information is that if we are going to get there, it's likely not going to come from Etsy because, like I said, Etsy is not growing, and they also seem to be moving away from print on demand in general. The second takeaway is that over the course of the pandemic, Etsy became this amazing place for people to sell products. During the pandemic, people were at home, they were not shopping in stores, they were buying things online on Etsy. That led to a lot of people having a lot of success with it and ultimately creating YouTube channels talking about it. But ultimately, like the video talked about today, that could have been a little bit of a fluke since Etsy is not really growing over the last few years. The third takeaway has a lot to do with what I talked about back in October here on my channel, that I thought Etsy was going to continue to be aggressive with removing listings and shutting down stores. Some of you watching this may have had listings restricted or your stores shut down, and ultimately what I said in October came true. The Etsy CEO said that they removed more listings than ever in Q1 of 2024. That means that in January, February, and March, they broke a record in terms of how many listings they actually removed. And like I said, let me know what you think. I could be way off here. I could have the wrong read on this entirely. I'm genuinely trying to piece this together as it is happening, just like some of you. So let me know what you think down in the comments below. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next video.